Hello, this is week 3, and this week we're going to look at developmentally appropriate practices. I really think this is an important thing to look at before we ever begin planning our first lesson. So let's look at our announcement page for our course. You're obviously all on there since you have accessed this video. This week, you're going to read Camp Chapter 3, and then there are a couple of PowerPoints, which I'm going to go over and an example, and we'll go over all of this before the end of our video. So let's begin with the developmentally appropriate practices, and there we have it. Okay, developmentally appropriate practice is teaching children where they are, what they're interested in, and what's culturally appropriate for where they live. Here is the official definition. Developmentally appropriate practice is a framework of principles and guidelines for best practice in the care and education of young children, birth through age 8. It is grounded both in the research on how young children develop and learn and what is known about education effectiveness. This comes from Eced, which is our governing body in early childhood. That being said, this is something you need to know the basic definition of. You will most likely see it on the OSAP. So keep it in mind. You'll hear a lot about DAP, developmentally appropriate practice. It's based on 3 different pieces of information: the child's age, individual interests, and culture. And when I look at the first piece, the age, think about going shopping with your niece. She's 8 years old. So you're going to look at an age appropriate department for her. You're going to look in the department that is for 8-year-old girls. And you're going to just head to girls size 7 through 14 in the in that area to find an outfit for a school function. It's very general. So when we say age appropriate for a lesson, we're talking about a very general consideration. Then let's look at individually appropriate. You notice that she really hates the color purple, but she loves the color orange. So you will try to identify some appropriate outfits for her in her size that have a little bit of orange in them, maybe. So when you're planning your lessons, once you know what's broadly age appropriate, then you start thinking about what your children in your classroom are interested in, and try to build on that. And then you're going to look at what's culturally and socially appropriate for the area in which you live. For instance, you wouldn't put your 8-year-old niece in this pink outfit in the middle for a school event because it's not culturally or socially appropriate for Tulsa, Oklahoma. So when you're planning your lessons, you might have the broad age appropriate, correct? And it might be of interest to one student, but would a thematic unit on ice fishing really be culturally appropriate for Tulsa, Oklahoma? No, because that's not something that the vast majority of children in our culture in Tulsa, Oklahoma have experienced. So it has to be culturally appropriate as well. And children must have at least a minimal bit of experience with whatever it is you're teaching in order for it to be relatable to them and understood, and most of all, remembered. So go ahead and get out your textbook on page 86. And if you have an online textbook, this can be different, but it's a pink box. And you'll see 2 children in there. There's Isaac and there's Tara. They're 2 different classes. And see the 2 approaches that the teachers use. And just for yourself, look at the difference that developmentally appropriate practice by one of the teachers makes. I'm not going to tell you which one. I want you to find it out for yourself. So if you were in my classroom right now, I'd tell you to get out a piece of paper and give it the old hamburger fold. The hamburger fold is the halfway fold that makes the big piece. It's hard to do, but it looks like this. And then once you've got that hamburger fold, you're going to make the hot dog fold and fold it one more time. And now you have what we call a four square. It's got 4 different squares. They're not really squares, but it's still what we call a four square in the classroom. And you have kids take a crayon and outline the folds. And then I would have you write the word on one of the squares, outline on another square, photograph on a third square, and real object on the fourth square. And if you want, you can do this at home. Now, on the first square where it says word, we're going to pretend you can't read and you have no idea what this says. You are 4 years old and the teacher's holding up a book that has these strange looking symbols, because I don't know yet that that's the alphabet, but these are some kind of markings. So what can you tell from that? You can tell some of the markings have pointy ends and some don't. Some of the markings have round pieces and some don't. Some of the markings are the same. I can tell that it's black and white. So which sense did you use? Obviously, you're only using one sense, vision. That's all you can, it's just your vision. And if you don't know what those squiggles are, then you really don't know much about it. That's an example. If you hold up a book in front of young children and all they see is those squiggles on the page, they're getting nothing out of that. We turn the page in the book. Now we have the clip art piece. And you can see from the clip art that there is a picture of an object. Now, if you live someplace where you're not familiar with what that is, you still are not sure. Or you might say it's a banana. But what can we tell about that banana from that piece of clip art? What sense are you, or senses are you using? If you said vision, just one sense, you're absolutely correct. We turn the page. And now what do you see? You see a bunch of bananas. This is the object, the photograph. So if you were to list down what you can tell, well, you can tell what color they are. You can tell that the tips are kind of dark brown or blackish and have a little bit of green. You can tell that they're a little curved. That's about it. What senses did you use? You used just one sense, your vision. And then we go to the last part. I'm so sorry you don't get to experience this, but you're eating the real banana. So if you were to write down under the real object section, what can you tell about the banana after eating it? Well, you're going to tell me it's sweet. It might make a squishy sound in your ear while you're eating it and chewing on it. You might tell me that it feels soft to your hands. You'll tell me that the outside of the peel feels kind of rubbery or slick. You might tell me that you obviously it's yellow. The ends feel rough and pointy. It smells sweet. So now what senses have you used? You've used your sense of vision, your hearing, your taste, your touch, your smell. You're using them all. This illustrates my point. When you're planning a lesson for children, it has to be the real experience. Very young children cannot relate to lessons that are theoretical or on a PowerPoint or on a page. They have to live it. They have to have the real object, the experience. So when you're working on your lessons, you will be bringing in the real object or something very related to the real object to your classroom. That is developmentally appropriate practice. Okay, I think that was pretty clear. We're going to go on now. The other thing that I want to go over is the family engagement plan assignment, because most of you have been placed in your pre-2. If you have not been placed, you will be very soon. And this is one of the first things that you need to get started when you get into your pre-2 placement. Please explain this assignment to your clinical faculty or cooperating teacher, whatever they call them these days, and get started, because it's kind of a long-term thing. Okay, I've got your syllabus pulled up, and this is a pretty big assignment. It's 50 points. This assignment allows you to interact with the children's family, and there are no other assignments in this class or any of the other early childhood classes that do that. So this is kind of a special assignment. And then you're going to share what you discover with your clinical faculty and obviously in your paper. Very rarely are families asked for their hopes and dreams or even what they think about what their children are learning in class. It just doesn't happen. So this assignment is really unique. You're going to start out, it's a two-pronged assignment. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to find out the history of the child's name, because names are really important, and families have specific reasons most of the time why a child is named whatever name they're named. So you're going to explain the fact to the clinical faculty that you need to find out the history of the child's name, and that you're going to write a friendly letter asking their caregivers to share the origin of the child's name. And you're going to send home a special paper for them to write on for the response. Now, that special paper, get something with a pretty edge on it. The dollar store has pads of paper that have pretty edges or pretty designs on one side or whatever. Don't spend a lot of money. The dollar store is perfect for this. Okay, so you're going to write this letter, and it's really important that you introduce yourself. Hi, my name is, I am an intern teacher in your child's classroom, and I am working, I would like to learn more about your child. Could you please tell me the history of your child's name? And then include a paragraph that has the history of your name. My name is, and I'm named for my great aunt, whatever, and so on and so forth. Be relatable. It's really important. Also, you'll want to bring in a box so that when children bring these back in during the week and you're not there, they have some place to put that letter. That way your teacher is not responsible for it. Okay. And once you come back in and you have an opportunity to look at all these wonderful responses, make sure that you you honor them, read them out loud to the class, during small group time, talk about them, and then give children an opportunity to enhance them. They could decorate the edges, they could color them, they could put popsicle sticks around the edges for a frame. If you have free laminating in your building, go and laminate them, and then have children, put some like the stickers around the sides, just something to create a family keepsake, and then send them home. Okay, so that was part one. Now, the next thing you're going to do is, that's why you want to start this early. Say you do this, and I give myself a month to do this. And then the next month, you're going to work on the hopes and dreams. And the hopes and dreams assignment, again, you're going to tell your clinical faculty about it. You're going to write another little letter. And you're going to ask their family members to share their hopes and dreams for their child. You're going to include a 3-dimensional object. No piece of paper, 3-dimensional object. And I have an example to show you when I'm done with this syllabus. Send the 3-dimensional object home with the letter. Again, you still have a box that they can put all their stuff in, so leave the box there. And that way, when you come back the next week, you can pick up whatever they've brought. You're going to record all of the hopes and dreams in the appropriate category down here. You're going to create this on your own. Knowledge, skills, dispositions, short-term and long-term. And then you're going to devise a display to go along with it. Are you going to hang it all on the wall? Are you going to put it in a pretty basket? Are you going to create some kind of a bulletin board display, whatever it is? And you're going to take a picture of that display and include it with your final written report. Okay, so that's what you're going to do for sending home and collecting. Once you have all of your 3-dimensional objects, and you're not going to get them all back, anytime you send stuff like this home, 33% response rate is considered excellent. So bear that in mind. Now, every now and then you're going to have a wonderful class where everybody brings it back, but consider yourselves very lucky if that happens. Okay, so regardless, if you don't have all back, that's fine. You're still going to write a written report. And you're going to respond to prompts 1 through 10. Okay, first prompt, and you can literally write it like this. Number 1, you're going to explain the creative approach you used to elicit parents' hopes and dreams for their children. Explain your letter. Explain what you sent home. Be sure to include an example of the letter you sent home. So just attach one of the letters to the back end of this piece here. Explain how you conveyed your interest in the history of the child's name to families. Be sure to include an example of the letter you sent home. Again, so there'll be 2 letters at the end of the paper. One for the names that you sent home, name history, and one for the hopes and dreams. Make sure you explain how the children turned this information into a family keepsake. What did you have them do to make it look nice? Explain the explicit and implicit ways you showed families that you valued their input. Explicit would be, you're straight out, thank you so much for bringing this back. I really appreciate it. That's pretty explicit. You're not making any bones about it. Implicit is creating a nice display. You're not saying anything, but you're doing. That's implicitly showing that you appreciate this input. Number 4, categorize families' hopes and dreams into knowledge, skills, dispositions, and short and long term. Okay, let's look at this. Knowledge is just what, if they say to you, I want Mary to learn about the world around her. Okay, that would be knowledge. Skills are super specific. I want Johnny to learn his ABCs. That's a skill. It's really highly specific. Dispositions are those social emotional things, like I want Susie to work well with others. That's a disposition. I want Susie to have a happy life. That's a disposition. I want Susie to make lots of friends. That's a disposition. Now, short-term things are things you can at least begin working on this year in class. So if someone says to you, I want Johnny to learn his ABCs, that's a short term. Right now, we're working on it next week. The same thing about the disposition, work well with others. You can do lots of social emotional things in the classroom to help children work together, put them in groups, have group activities, read books about making friends, all those wonderful things you can do to help children be well on their way to working with others. But working well with others can also be viewed as a long-term project. So it's okay to have it be multiple things at once. You can have it be long-term and short-term. Totally fine. And something might be viewed as a skill as well as a piece of knowledge. It's all in how you look at it. So I'm not going to grade you on how you did that, but I want you to write every specific one down and put it in the appropriate category where you believe it fits. And then number 5, and go ahead and number these. Tell me about the hopes and dreams that were categorized as short terms. Talk about them. And then talk about the ones that were addressed as and categorized as long-term. Explain why you did that. And number 6, explain how families' hopes and dreams could impact your current classroom practices. Be sure to describe specific practices. Okay, so say for instance here on Johnny needing to learn his ABCs, that's a short-term one. So I would want to include specific lessons in my classroom geared towards ABC identification. Okay, so I'd have alphabet books in the reading center. I would be working on some alphabet songs. I would be working on practice in writing the alphabet. I would probably use some alphabet flashcards with Johnny. Those are all highly specific things that I would do in my classroom. Remember, impact your current classroom practices to help Johnny learn the ABCs. Number 7, what are the potential benefits for using this activity in your own classroom? Talk about, what benefits do you see? If you don't, tell me why you don't. Number 8, include a photograph of your 3-dimensional display. Number 9, include both letters you send home. Number 10, turn into Blackboard assignments. So then look at the grading rubric. Here are all the numbers that I just went over. They're all represented on here. And it tells you exactly how you're going to be graded. You notice the difference between effective and highly effective is always in the details and amount of examples that you include. Multiple specific details and examples. That's always the clincher here. Let me go back up in here. And you're going to, let me pull this up. There's where I'm at. Okay. Number 5. For number 5, I want you to really explain what was discovered, new understandings and discoveries about families and the community that were identified from responses using the ecological systems theory. Look at the child's microsystem, mesosystem, exosystem, and the whole thing, chronosystem, macrosystem. And what can you think about knowing of these systems that affect the child? For instance, okay, say you got Junior's paperback the next day. Well, that tells you something about his mesosystem, the relationship of the family to the child's school. They are very, very rapidly responding to you. There's a really solid, good relationship. That mesosystem, that series of relationships, is working well. Think about what they've written. Lots of times they write things that are religious. And that goes back to one of the child systems. I'm going to let you figure that one out. So think about that. And let me get out of this, and I want to go back to the announcement page. Okay, I told you I'd have an example, and this is probably not the biggest example in the world, but here's an example of a 3-dimensional object that you can send home for the hopes and dreams. And that 3-dimensional object here is a pumpkin, and they had the families write their hopes and dreams on the sides of the pumpkins. Again, your 3-dimensional objects need to be really cheap. There are lots of free ones that you can use from out in nature. I'm not going to say too much because I want it to be original and let you come up with it. But think about it. And if you have any questions about whether or not something would be a good 3-dimensional object, please check with me. Please do not send home paper. Let the family have the fun of writing it on a 3-dimensional object. Okay, so this week you're going to do the content quiz 2, and that's in assignments, and that'll be due by Sunday at 11:59 p.m. I left this up here because this is the SOEA meeting, and that will be on Wednesday, February 1st. If you have any questions about anything we talked about today, please let me know. I'll be happy to schedule a Zoom meeting with you. I hope you have a wonderful week. Bye-bye.